Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the book discussions of Sheaves and Stars. We began last time with the prologue and we're going to go into the chapters next week, but first I wanted to address this section that starts with chapter 1 because we already talked about how the book is laid out with sections and how they're all based on the word from Jacob in Genesis 49. If you recall the previous video, one of the videos I shot during launch week introduced the sections of the book. So you can go back and watch that if you want to know about where those sections came from. But this first section, because it starts in between the prologue and chapter 1, we have section 1, the archers in the book here. And it starts with Genesis 49:23 through 24. Which says, the archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, meaning Joseph, yet his bow remained unmoved. So this is the first section of the book, and obviously this is coming from Jacob recounting Joseph's story later on, and the archers Jacob is referring to are Joseph's brothers. Now, if you remember in the prologue of my book, Jacob tells Joseph that the Lord, God, is the master bowman who will shoot him into his destiny. And Joseph thinks that's a cool analogy, but Joseph soon finds out that there are other archers as well, and they're aiming at him with vengeful intent. And that's the thing, is God has a plan for all of us, but we all have to contend with the world, the flesh, the enemy, things like that. Joseph's brothers have been angry for a long time over his position as his father's favorite, and even more angry over his dreams that prophesy his rulership over them. But this is the moment when they take matters into their own hands. So the archer section begins with the point of no return, where Joseph's brothers make their first official move against him, and takes us to the point where Joseph enters Egypt. So it encompasses all those chapters where Joseph is basically figuring out how to deal with the worst calamity of his life and deciding what he's going to be able to do about it and how it lines up with the dreams and calling that God has spoken over him. And that's what most of us do with our traumas when they initially happen. We're dealing with the shock of it all, but mentally we're also in tumult trying to figure out what we can do and how this all lines up with what we previously believed. That's honestly the worst of unexpected trauma, I think, is that it busts in and scatters our comfort zones where everything we believed was in neat little boxes, and now it's all blown apart and we have to pick through the pieces. And that's scary, and I don't believe Joseph was any exception with that. Now, you'll see as you read that the sections also align with Joseph's character arc or his growth as a character. And each section sort of takes him into a new level of maturity as the stakes are continually raised. So what we're going to see happen to Joseph in this first section is that he's going to go from the fierce denial and anger and bargaining that are common with the first stages of grief to the first level of acceptance that he's able to reach. It's not full acceptance yet, but we're going to see God taking him through many levels of faith and trust. And the first one is being able to trust God's activity and grace over his life, even if he can't fix this disaster in his own strength. His initial reaction is that this cannot happen to him because God's call over his life won't work out if he's a slave. And it's that place that any of us would have been mentally at a time like this. This is too terrible for God to allow. He has to rescue me and I have to rescue myself. And that's the only path forward that Joseph sees at first. And that's often what we would see in the midst of a struggle. We just want out. And then when it's clear that God isn't snatching us out of a situation and we can't fix it in our own strength, it's easy to slip into depression or resentment of God. But even in the midst of his grief, Joseph comes to the first level of owning his faith in this section, where he's able to believe that God is still with him, even if the things have not been made right. He concludes that God's presence with him and the things God spoke over him are still real and can still be trusted, even if he can't make sense of the circumstances that resulted from his brother's hatred. That's a tough place to be because we want to be able to work out the details of what God's going to do to fix the situation that is so wrong. But sometimes God just wants us to take that first step and trust that he is the master bowman. He's the only one who can shoot us into our destiny, and he's still able to do it through anything. So I hope this encourages you, and I hope that if you haven't already, you will dive into the rest of the chapters and join me as we continue discussing them, because there's so much in this for our lives that we can be encouraged by. Hope you enjoy. See you next time.